And good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Big Blue Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Volz, a sophomore here at SUNY Fredonia. I've got plenty to talk about this week. If anybody has been following what's going on in Buffalo sports right now, imagine a train just kind of going off the tracks and like derailing and kind of exploding into a giant ball of fire. That's about the best metaphor I can find for the current status of sports in Buffalo, especially with the Bills and Sabres. So we've got a lot to get to today, obviously, with the Sabres getting destroyed last night at home against the Boston Bruins while getting flat out embarrassed. And speaking of huge embarrassing failures, the Bills game on Monday night against the Denver Broncos. And we will get to all of that later. But first, I want to talk about Fredonia sports because, to be completely honest, from a pure sports lens, the Fredonia Blue Devils teams are kind of keeping me sane right now. I mean, with what's going on with the Bills and the Sabres, being able to look at Instagram and see that Fredonia sports teams are winning, it's like, all right, at least somebody is winning games. And nobody has been winning at a more successful rate so far this winter season than the women's basketball team. 2 games, 2 wins. The women's team has started 2-0 for the second straight year. Remember last year they started 2-0, or actually I think they started, if I remember correctly, I'll double check just to be sure if I can look back at their schedule last year. Yeah, so last year they started 3-1 and then ended up going 2-16 in their remaining 18, or no, 2-17 in their remaining. I can't do math in my head. My dad's a math teacher. You would think that I'd be able to do math in my head, but sometimes no. The Blue Devils started 3-1 last year, ended up finishing the season 5-18. This year they've started 2-0 again. They were home on Saturday for their opener. They played Hilbert, and Fredonia just absolutely took control of that game. 61-38, a complete domination pretty much from start to finish in that game. And last night they were on the road. They were all the way in Ohio, actually, taking on Hiram, and it was more of the same. It was a 9-point win, 68-59. Blue Devils are 2-0. And they're actually headed up to Brockport this week, and they've got a 2-game tournament. They play William Smith College on Friday and then Keuka on Saturday. The game against Keuka College is at 1 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, and the Friday game on the Blue Devils website, a time is not listed. And the whole thing with like Hobart and William Smith, it's difficult for us to understand because here at Fredonia, both teams are just the Blue Devils. That's our mascot. But there, it's like their men's teams are the Hobart, the Hobart Statesmen, I think they are. They're Hobart, and then all the women's teams are William Smith College. They're the William Smith Herons. So it's kind of weird. I remember seeing that on the schedule early this season. I think it was for a swim meet. And I was like, interesting. The men's team is against Hilbert, but the women's team is against William Smith. They're both here at the same time. What is that? What is that about? And so, yeah, it's an interesting dynamic that they have going on up there. But, yeah, the women's basketball team is 2-0. They have looked absolutely excellent in their 2 games so far this season. And, it's kind of like what we've seen with the Sabres in previous years. Not this year, but, how many years in a row? The Sabres had an amazing start. They were so good in – there was the year that they won 8 out of 10 games in October. They started 8-2 or something. I think it was 8-2-1 in their first 11 or something like that. Or you had the year where they won 10 in a row in November. The Blue Devils are off to a hot start. Now it's all about, can they sustain that hot start? I think they can. I think that they have looked, in their 2 wins so far this year, they have looked really good. Their games last year that they started off with wins, and the last time they played William Smith, that was here. They beat them 66-57 last year. Last year their first couple of wins were relatively close games, won by I think there was one game that they might have won by 11 points, but the other ones they kind of won by 4 or 5. It's like that. Not that it wasn't sustainable, obviously, but they weren't really dominating teams. This year's been different. I mean, in the two teams they've played, Hilbert and Hiram, they have dominated both of those teams. And the hope is that that can continue to move forward and just a really, really good start for the women's basketball team. The men's basketball team, record-wise, they're 1-2. They lost a really close one last night. Again, it's like they're 1-2. You know, they had the game against Allegheny College to start the year last Wednesday night, 112-97 win. They were awesome in that game. I was at that game. I sat courtside with a few friends of mine. Parker Gurnett was there with me as well. And, oh my gosh, it was like, that was a rockin' atmosphere. That's about as crazy of an atmosphere that I've seen in my time at Fredonia. And that's what I want to see more of because it was awesome. We had, you know, the whole hockey team was there, and there were a good amount of students at that game. And they were treated to quite a show from the Blue Devils, 112 points. It was an awesome game to be at. They played Grove City on Friday. And listen, Grove City that's a good basketball team, especially defensively. Fredonia lost that one 61-57. Yeah, that's a close, tough loss. You're going to have those. And then last night, again, another 4-point loss. They lost 66-62 to Penn State Barron. The Blue Devils' 2 losses have been by a combined 8 points. So they're right in it. You know, even though they're 1-2, those 2 losses are like, okay, I mean, Grove City is really good. And Penn State Barron, you're going on the road to play that game. And you only lost those games by 4 points. Like, you were right in it. That's the type of game where, like, you know, if 1 or 2 other shots that you missed, if those fall, you win, you know? So those losses are going to happen. They're actually back at it tonight. Parker just texted me talking about the basketball game, talking about how it was an insane game. It was awesome. The men's team is back at home tonight. They're taking on Hilbert at 7 o'clock, and I encourage everybody to pack that Dodds Hall gym. I mean, that was a rockin' atmosphere last Wednesday, and I really think the team fed off of that. I mean, those guys were loving it. There was one moment in the game where the Blue Devils had put up an alley-oop, and there was just an awesome dunk, and, oh, man, it was like, you felt like they were about to take the roof off of that place. It was awesome there on last Wednesday night, and I hope that that's the atmosphere again tonight. You know, it's gonna be fun. I'm really, really excited to see what the Blue Devils can do tonight because I think they can win. I think they can even up their record at 2-2. Going to be a really exciting game. Again, tip-off is at 7 o'clock in the Dodds Hall gym. The men's swimming and diving teams were on the road. They were taking on Alfred and the University of Rochester in a 3-team meet. And while both teams ended up coming short, you kind of have to put it in perspective. Like, the men's swimming and diving team has 4 guys on their roster. That's it. You know, when you've got a roster that small, there's really not a ton that you're going to be able to do. You know, so then it kind of becomes more about, and I know this from, you know, having my experience around like really small cross-country teams where you don't have enough runners to officially score as a team. You know, it becomes more focused on individual performance then. You know, you get, let's say you have, for Fredonia's case, let's say you have a swimmer who, you know, even though you might lose because you only have 4 and you're going up against 13 guys on the other team or something like that. You know, let's say you've got a swimmer who just crushed his personal best in like the 100-meter backstroke or something like that. You know, it's those little things that you need to focus on. And the women's team, they are more fortunate in terms of numbers, but still they don't have a very big team either. So I think for both the men's and women's swimming and diving teams, it really boils down to individual performance and what each athlete can do to better themselves week in and week out. I think that's the improvement from meet to meet. I find that to be far, and maybe that's, you know, my dad was a coach, has been a coach for years, and maybe that's my coach's son mentality coming out. But I think that the improvement from meet to meet is far more important than any score that can go on the scoreboard, you know. The reality of it is, and I don't want to be, and I don't mean to be overly critical when I say this, the reality is that they are probably not going to win very many meets. And that's not like a shot at their talent or anything. That's just a simple fact that they don't have enough people on their roster to compete with some schools that have like 15 or 16 swimmers. So then it really becomes more focused on that individual performance. And again, what they can do to better themselves week in and week out. Both teams are at home this weekend for the Blue Devil Invitational. It's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday event. They've got 4 teams coming to Fredonia: Penn State Barron, Alfred State, Baldwin Wallace, and Pitt Bradford. It should be a lot of fun, and again, that's an opportunity. You've got 4 different teams. Only one of whom you've seen, you've seen 2 of them. You've already seen Baldwin Wallace and Pitt Bradford. But the other 2 in Alfred State and Penn State Barron, you haven't seen yet this year. So it's an opportunity for some good competition. And I think that they're up to the challenge. I think it's going to be a fascinating meet to see how those results play out. Now, finally, on to the men's hockey team. It has not necessarily been the start to the season that Coach Meredith wanted. You had the overtime win over the EHL All-Stars, and then the scrimmage tie against Buff State. You lost 2 to Trine. You lost 2 Rhodes-Suniac matchups. Last weekend, they were at home against Buff State for their regular season home opener. And I talked to Coach Meredith last Thursday about that game. And he said what we need to do is he talked about playing, a more simple, a more direct game in terms of getting pucks to the net and just, not waiting around too much to see if you'll get he talked about not waiting too much for those grade A chances. He talked about, just getting pucks to the net, taking those, as he called them, maybe grade C or grade D chances, because maybe, you never know. This is my biggest pet peeve with hockey teams, is when they don't get pucks to the net. And the Sabres do this on their power play until the cows come home, and it drives me absolutely nuts. They just dance around for 30, 40 seconds, and they don't ever get a shot on net. Like, you never know. You might as well just throw pucks to the net. It was an old Wayne Gretzky quote. Or if you're an Office fan, if you're a fan of The Office, it was Michael Scott quoting Wayne Gretzky. You miss 100% of the shots you never take. And it sounds corny, but it's true. It's absolutely true. You never know what happens. You get pucks to the net. You never know. Maybe somebody's screening the goaltender and the goaltender won't see it. Or maybe the goaltender doesn't really play it right and there's a big rebound left for you. Or maybe it takes a weird bounce in off of a defender or something like that. You never know. 9 times out of 10, you take a weak shot on net, like it might get blocked in front, or a goaltender's going to make a save. And if that happens, it's like, well, at least you tried. You never know until you try. Really. I mean, it sounds cliche and it sounds simple, but it's absolutely true. Unfortunately, on Friday night, I didn't really see that from the Blue Devils. I didn't really see them getting a lot of pucks to the net. I thought Buff State more or less dominated the pace of play, and the Bengals end up winning that 4-1. The frustration boiled over for Fredonia at the end of the game. They were just taking some really mindless, careless penalties. And it's just, listen, you get frustrated. I get it. But you have to keep your head screwed on straight. And that's easy. It's easy for me to stand on my soapbox and say that. But I'm also a former athlete. For example, I was a tennis player when I was in high school. I truly, adamantly believe that I am the worst tennis player in the history of my high school. I believe that to be a fact. I am 90% sure. So like in tennis, you play, it's the best 2 out of 3 sets. And in an individual set, the first to win 6 games wins that set. And like in the games, it's like, you ever play Wii tennis? It's like 15, 30, 40, whatever. And if you lose 6-0, 6-0, it means you didn't win a single game. That we used to call that, we called that the double donut on my high school tennis team. And my high school tennis coach would always say that if we beat somebody 6-0, 6-0, that she would bring us in donuts. And it did happen a couple of times. But I believe that I hold my high school's record for the most times getting double donutted. There has to be a stat for that somewhere. It happened to me like 6 times. I'm convinced that statistically, I am the worst Allegheny Limestone tennis player literally ever. I'm totally convinced of that. But that's a side note. But anyways, there was actually a point to this, believe it or not. My point was that I would get like really, really mad when I would be losing and playing like garbage. I'd get really upset with myself. But I knew that I couldn't lose my composure. Because I knew that, okay, you lose your composure and you're going to do something stupid and then you're totally going to lose your chance to win. I never know, like maybe if I just keep my head on straight and stay focused, I probably won't win the match, but maybe I'll win a game or two. I don't know that ever actually happened. I don't know that I ever won a game. I'd have to ask my coach, but I don't remember, honestly. But no, I was really bad at tennis. Oh, my gosh. Our team was so fun. Our team was, we had a lot of fun. But anyways, back to the Blue Devils, because that was the main focal point of this conversation. Fredonia, I give them a heck of a lot of credit for as badly as they played on Friday night, and it really was not a good game. Just got to be blunt. They went up to Buffalo for another matchup with Buff State on Saturday, and they came to play. They came out. I couldn't remember. So on Saturday night, I could not remember if the game started at 7 or 7:30 because the Sabres game was at 7:30. And I couldn't remember if the Fredonia game was 7 or 7:30. So I didn't turn it on until about 7:25-ish. And I turned the game on, and Fredonia's already ahead 2-0. I was like, what did I miss? Like, oh my gosh. And so it was cool to see that. I mean, Saturday night, the Blue Devils looked really good. They responded to the challenge, and I give them a heck of a lot of credit for doing that. That's the sign of a team that is resilient and mentally tough. You get, more or less dominated on your home ice, and you respond by going on the road and taking it to the team that just beat you. That's a pretty resilient squad. And Coach Meredith, I'm sure he is, but Coach Meredith should be awful proud of his guys for how they played Saturday. I know I was darn proud of them. That was an awesome performance. They're in action again tonight at 6:30. They're on the road against Morrisville, long drive. And then they are headed up to Geneva to take on Hobart at 4 o'clock on Saturday. They're not home again until December 8th and 9th. December 8th, they'll take on Potsdam. December 9th will be against Plattsburgh. And, I think that it's hard when you're going on the road so much, but there's the opportunity to pick up some wins. And they got a lot more home games next semester, so there's obviously a lot of hope for the Blue Devils moving forward. And it's been a good start to the year so far, athletics-wise, and let's see if we can't keep that going. So I'm going to take a quick break, and when I come back, I guess it's time to talk about the Sabres. Yeah, it's not necessarily fun, but we got to do it. So thanks for tuning in and listening to me on Big Blue Sports Podcast here on 88.9 WCVF FM, the campus and community voice of Fredonia.
Like gravity is getting stronger. Something's pushing down on my shoulders, trying to flatten me out, leave me on the ground. Dreamt of standing in line last night, just queuing up in an unending line. The feeling grows. My feet are stuck in the thickest mud. Trying to pull myself free from it. Starting to feel that's a Sisyphean task.
On the air at 88.9 WCVF. We are the campus and community voice of Fredonia.
And welcome back to Big Blue Sports Podcast. Before we continue with our show, I wanted to let you know that the Fun and Logic Club has a game night every week. The board games and card games are supplied by the club, but you can also bring your own. The club meetings are every Thursday at 7 p.m. in the Williams Center in rooms 204 ABC. And I got a chance to go to the game night a couple of weeks ago, and they have like two giant tote bins of all sorts of games there. And they kind of pick one game and play it as a group, but you can go and, play other games off to the side, whatever. And it's really, really cool. There's a lot of really neat people that are involved with it, and it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. You know what's not fun? When the Buffalo Sabres can't figure out how to do, like, anything positive. Now, I guess I'll issue a disclaimer that, yes, I understand that the Boston Bruins are really, really good. They came into last night's game at 11-1-2, 5-1-1 on the road. I get it. They're good. Last night was the Sabres captain Kyle Okposo was his 1,000th NHL game. Now, Kyle Okposo has battled through a lot. Okposo was drafted by the New York Islanders back in 2006, played there for a handful of years, and then in 2016, he became a free agent, and the Sabres signed him to a 6-year deal. 6-year, I think it was 40-something million, whatever. And, it was 40, yes, it was 42 million. It was 7 years, $42 million. And, Kyle Okposo, unfortunately, did not really necessarily live up to the contract that the Sabres initially signed him to. But, when he was first brought in, I remember there was a lot of hype and excitement. In his second season in Buffalo, towards the end of it, he had sustained a concussion. I believe it was during practice. And there was a story written about it in The Athletic about 5 years ago. And I'm being 100% serious. It's the best piece of sports journalism I've ever read in my life. It's called Back from the Abyss. It was by John Warrow of The Athletic. It is such an incredibly well done article. That's one of those things that you get chills every time you read it. And Okposo dealt with so much of a fallout from the concussion that he sustained. He was hospitalized in Buffalo. And there were times where it got so bad that he would get, he would like spiral into just this like state of anxiety and panic. And the only thing that would bring him out of it was by feeling the texture of his wife's wedding ring. And he went into detail about that. And Kyle recovered from it and came back to play. And that's where a lot of times we as fans can tend to be very critical of Okposo because, the guy has lost his step. Like, I love Kyle Okposo, but man, he's got to retire. I got to think this is his last season because he just doesn't have the same juice that he had before. And he looks a step slower this year. And quite frankly, I worry about him. I worry that every time, and my mom's the same way. We talk about this, when we watch games together. Every time Kyle just takes any kind of hit, we cringe. We're so worried that something awful is going to happen to him again. But I give Okposo a heck of a lot of credit. And that's a big reason why Kyle Okposo earned the captaincy. And, Okposo means so much to that locker room. And, it became kind of a joke. A lot of the younger players called him dad last year because technically he's old enough to be some of their fathers. But, last night was his 1,000th career game. That's a huge milestone, especially when you've been through everything Okposo has been through. So I have to be completely honest. The fact that it's your captain, your leader, who's been through so much, it's the 1,000th game of his career. It's a huge night for him. And you come out dead flat. That's really sad. That's really, really sad. That you come out absolutely dead flat with no air in your tires at all. I would think after the Sabres got more or less embarrassed in Pittsburgh on Saturday night, I would think that they would come home to a full crowd at KeyBank Center for Kyle Okposo's 1,000th game against a really good team in Boston. I would think the Sabres would come out with any juice at all. Apparently, that's too much to ask. I don't understand how, as National Hockey League players, you can come out in a game after getting more or less mauled a few nights before. You come home in front of your fans in a huge game, and you have no energy? What is going on? I get it. It's still relatively early in the season. Yeah, I get it. You're still waiting to get a few players back from, Matthias Samuelsson just came back off an injury. And Alex Tuck is still out. And you've got some other guys that are banged up, whatever. And Jack Quinn's still out too. You just can't play like they did last night. They lost 5-2. And I'll be honest, the final score makes it look a lot closer than it was. They got blown out. They got embarrassed. That was a sad performance. I missed a good portion of the game because I had a meeting last night. And my meeting ended at 8 o'clock. And when I left the meeting, they were already losing 3-0. So it was not, to me, a game that was really worth watching. I watched some of it. I got a chance to watch David Pasternak's goal. Oh, my gosh. Could the Sabres have played that worse defensively? Jeez. Skated right around Jeff Skinner. Dahlin kind of takes his man to the wall. Pasternak totally blows by Samuelsson. Jeez. I thought the defensive issues had gotten better from last year. Not last night. Nope. Last night looked like garbage. They literally, the best way I can describe it is they had no air in their tires. Nothing. It's ridiculous. I can't understand for the life of me, sometimes, how NHL players are allowed to just, not really do anything for several games in a row. I don't get it. Where are some of your key contributors? Well, we know where Tage Thompson is now. He's hurt. He's going to be out for a couple weeks. Because, first of all, Tage was the first injury, whatever. He got tripped and landed on his knee. How that wasn't a penalty, I don't understand. I don't get how that wasn't a penalty. But then again, NHL referees are usually pretty bad at their jobs, and I'm pretty sure that they are, slightly vision impaired. I think it's a job requirement, but it's mind-boggling to me how that wasn't a penalty. But then Tage comes back into the game and takes a slap shot off the wrist. Now he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. Was it really worth putting him back in the game? I have to question that. I mean, you're getting crushed. You're getting embarrassed. You look lifeless on the ice, flailing around like a fish out of water. Is it really worth putting Tage back in the game after he had limped off the ice at the end of the first period? I don't know that it is. So that's a question I was asking. Devin Levi, listen, Levi, I believe, is talented. And I think Devin Levi has what it takes to be a franchise goaltender. Last night was not his night. He looked bad last night. And it's a shame. Because we know he's better than that. And the rest of the team, we know they're better than that. They're still young. They're still learning. But you can't have losses like that. You just can't. At least not in 2 games in a row. The last 2 games, the Sabres have been outscored 9-2. Their only 2 goals were scored by Victor Olofsson last night. Olofsson finally decided to show up for once this season. Guy hasn't done anything. He scored both goals last night. Seems like Olofsson only ever shows up when the Sabres are getting blown out. And I'm not the only one who has that opinion. I just think that the Sabres need a heck of a lot more from pretty much everybody. That is not an acceptable level of effort, or at least it shouldn't be. You're at home in your captain's 1,000th game after getting boat raced on Saturday night. At least come out and show some heart. Come on, I don't get it. I don't understand it. For the life of me, I can't understand it. You're National Hockey League players. Let's go. Wake up and figure it out. And y'all think I'm mad? Y'all think I'm mad now? Just wait until we get to the Bills. Oh boy. I just can't. The last couple of days for a Buffalo sports fan, not good. Not good at all. The Sabres are 7-8-1. They're 4-5 at home. Once again, we run into this issue. I don't understand why the Sabres just don't play well at home. It makes no sense. You would think that they would be good at home. No, they're not. And I don't get it. When you come home, that's an opportunity to play in front of your loyal fans. Can't keep coming out dead flat, because this is far from the first time that team has done that at home. Far from it. And I don't understand how it's allowed to keep happening. If I'm on that Buffalo coaching staff, I'm waking up this morning and I am not happy. At all. I would have some things to say to the team. Because that pathetic showing, really? I get it, Boston's good. But did you show any drive out there? Come on. Let's wake up and figure it out. Sabres are on the road on Friday for an 8 o'clock matchup with the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets are a solid team. You know, it's at the point right now where, yes, I get it, the Sabres are young, but that's where you've got to come out. The Sabres are a team that, because they're young and inexperienced, they haven't developed enough of their game yet. The Sabres, pretty much, they've got to outwork every team they play. You know, they've got to get by on their hard work. There was an old Herb Brooks quote in the Olympics in 1980. He was talking to the hockey team, and he told them, he said, you gentlemen think you can win, or he said, you think you can win on talent alone? Gentlemen, you don't have enough talent to win on talent alone. And I almost think like, okay, I would tweak that phrase a little bit for the Sabres. I would say you don't have enough talent yet. The potential's there. Listen, they're good, but that's still a young team. And because there are skills that aren't fully developed yet, that's where your hard work has to counter that. You know, you've got to outwork your opponent night in and night out. I didn't see that from the Sabres on Tuesday night. Yes, you're going to have bad losses, but you get crushed in back-to-back. I mean, you get crushed in Pittsburgh on Saturday, and you come out dead flat, just lifeless against a big rival at home on your captain's 1,000th game. It's sad. I mean, come on. It can't happen. Just can't happen. And I'd like to think that the Sabres are going to point themselves in the right direction, but you just can't do that. You know, like, you're a young team, you got to work more than that. It just, simply put, you've got to work more than that. Anyways, that's enough talk about the Sabres. When I come back, it's Bills time. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation about what went on Monday night and what's gone on since for the Bills. Thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports Podcast. I know this is not a particularly happy episode of Big Blue Sports Podcast, but hopefully you're enjoying it. And thanks for tuning in on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia.
I get lost, running circles in my mind. That's the cost of living the dream as you and I. And all our friends are growing up, some are going gray. But look at us, we haven't aged a day. Hope, I got hope. You will always be there at the end of my rope. As long as I got you to take this journey on with me. There's nothing else that I could ever need. We got enough gas to keep this tin can on the road. Just enough cash, let the bills pile up at home. And all our friends are busy saving up for rainy days. We wouldn't have this any other way. Hope, I got hope that you will always be there at the end of my rope. As long as I got you to take this journey on with me. There's nothing else that I could ever need. And all our friends are busy waiting for that rainy day. Hope, I got hope. You will always be there at the end of my rope. As long as I got you to take this journey on with me. There's nothing else that I could hope. I got hope that you will always be there at the end of my rope. As long as I got you to take me
down for the next soul's garden before the hour is done. It's more a question of feeling than it is a question of fun. The confidence is the balaclava, I'm sure you'll baffle them good. With the ending reek of salty cheeks and runny makeup alone. Oh, we'll put a run down the face of a boy with a scorn. You find yourself in a skirmish where you wish you never been born. You tie yourself to the tracks and there isn't no going back. And it's wrong, 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 but we'll do it anyway 'cause we're a little bit of trouble. From a burning building or throwing it to the sharks. But all you're at the ending is as pleasurable as the start. The confidence is the balaclava, I'm sure you're back on the straight. And it's wrong, 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 she can hardly wait. That's right, he won't let her out his side. Now the shaggers perform and the daggers are drawn. Who's the crooks in this crime? That's right, he won't let her out his side. Now the shaggers perform and the daggers are drawn. Who's the crooks in this crime? Kiss, quiet and unassuming, but you were that they were the naughtiest. She pleaded with you to take it off, but you resisted and for. I'm sorry, sweetheart, I'd much rather keep on the balaclava.
Tune in to News at Noon on Mondays and Wednesdays at noon, with an additional news segment on High Noon Friday, every Friday at noon. News at Noon gives you your local, campus, and international updates, as well as sports and weather. Be sure to tune in.
And welcome back to Big Blue Sports Podcast. So earlier in the show, I got an email from the Bills because I was at the game Monday night. And it was, the Buffalo Bills need your feedback. Matt, let us know what we're doing great and what we could do better. How was your game day experience? We hope you enjoyed attending the game. All that sort of stuff. You want my feedback, Bills? You want my feedback, Buffalo? Okay. I'll give you my feedback. What in the world was that? Monday night. 5 games in a row. Going into Monday night, the offense had been a horrendous disaster 5 weeks in a row. You thought for sure on a Monday night with a packed house, Bills Mafia in full force, you thought for sure against the Denver Broncos, who gave up 70 points to the Miami Dolphins earlier in this season, the same team you held to 20 a few weeks ago. You thought for sure maybe the offense would figure it out. Took them one play on Monday night to already screw that up. I can't even begin to go into how broken this football team is right now. They are a shell of what they used to be. They are nothing compared to the last 3 years right now. Jeff Saturday on ESPN this morning called the Bills organization a dumpster fire. Right now, he's kind of right. I mean, it is a disaster in Buffalo right now. I can't even, I don't even know where to begin. Where do you begin? The fact that the defense, despite missing half of their starters, is playing their heart out week in and week out, and the offense continues to let them down. The fact that the special teams looks terrible, even though Sean McDermott's already on his second special teams coordinator. Or how about the fact that the offense, with Josh Allen's hand-picked offensive coordinator, looks like garbage? How's that? How's that for a starting point? I mean, the last several weeks have been ridiculous. When they did nothing against the Jets, we chalked it up to, it's the start of the year. It's a fluky game. They always have, 1 or 2 per year. Every team has their bad games, whatever. The next 3 weeks after that, they look great. They were awesome. Dominated the Raiders, crushed Washington, and handedly beat Miami. And then they go to London to play Jacksonville. I don't really know what happened after the Bills beat the Dolphins on October 1st, but their offense vanished with that win. Vanished. They hung 48 points on Miami. I mean, it takes them 3 games to score 48 points nowadays. I mean, I can't understand why. And it's allowed to keep happening. The Bills made a decision yesterday. The Bills fired offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey. It was a move that needed to be made. You can't have, with the level of talent the Bills have in their offense, and don't you dare give me an injuries excuse either. I don't want to hear it. I understand Dawson Knox is out injured. I get that. I get that Josh Allen might be playing injured. I don't want to hear your injuries excuse. And I can tell you what, your defense sure doesn't want to hear your injuries excuse, because your defense is missing more than half of its starters and is still holding up its end of the deal, game in and game out. Your defense is giving you a chance to win every single week. I said leaving the game on Monday night, I feel bad for the Bills' defense. I feel so bad for them because, once again, they've played well enough to win. And the offense, once again, doing what they've done best this season, which is let everybody down. They have been a massive disappointment this year. It's ridiculous. You have an all-pro, generational talent under center in Josh Allen. What is wrong with Josh Allen right now? Does he need colorblind glasses? Because he keeps throwing the ball to teams in the opposite. He keeps throwing the ball to players in the other jersey. I couldn't understand. Maybe the Bills' offense couldn't understand that the ball wasn't supposed to go to players in white jerseys on Monday night. Josh Allen, just because somebody's open doesn't mean he's one of your teammates. Ridiculous. Gabe Davis, again, another terrible game from a guy who's supposed to be the Bills' number 2 receiver. Ridiculous. He's supposed to be the reliable second option behind Stephon Diggs. One of Josh Allen's interceptions was not Allen's fault at all. The other ones for sure were. Or the other one, I guess. He only had one other interception. Got to be a record for him this year, right? I mean, Allen hits Gabe Davis right on the hands. And Gabe brings out the Butterfingers and drops it. And it sails right into the hands of one of the Broncos safeties. If you can't catch the football, how are you supposed to be a reliable number 2 option? I mean, it's pathetic. They can't hang on to the ball either. They were fumbling all over the place. The Bills turned the ball over 4 times. We listened to, so Parker and I, if you listen to Fifth Quarter on Monday before the game, Parker and I were at the game, so it was just Mitch on the air. And Mitch outlined his keys to the game. And his number 1 key was, don't turn the ball over. One play, first play, James Cook fumbles. And it's a terrible mistake. Don't get me wrong, and he should be held accountable for it. But uh-oh, now he's in the Sean McDermott doghouse. Oh no, now we can't play most of the first half. Like, he's one of your best weapons on offense. And because he fumbled once, which, by the way, was his first fumble since the first game of his career. That was his first fumble of the season, his first fumble since last September. Only the second fumble of his entire career. But nope, he's got to be benched. Meanwhile, Gabe Davis screws up left and right. He's always on the field. Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown look like garbage, and they play every play. Josh Allen can't stop throwing the ball to the other team. He's still out there. What's going on, McDermott? I tell you what, about Sean McDermott, I never was one to say, I was never one to join the Fire McDermott crowd. I thought that was a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction to some bad games. After Monday night's game and after yesterday's decision to fire Ken Dorsey, I really thought about it. And I was like, okay, Sean McDermott has now hired and fired 2 offensive coordinators, has hired and fired a special teams coordinator. Brian Daboll left to take a head coaching job, and it looked like there was no love lost between the two of them after the Bills-Giants game. You've had other coaches leave to take the same position, like Chad Hall, the Bills receivers coach, left to take another receivers coach position. And not to mention, former players have not had good things to say about Sean McDermott. It is time to start having that conversation. It is absolutely time to start talking about it, folks. I mean, is the common link here, are the Bills going to get anywhere with Sean McDermott as head coach? Because instead of holding players, or instead of holding himself accountable ever, McDermott would rather walk up and down the sidelines and clap 5 million times in a game. His timeout management at the end of the game, oh my gosh. And I didn't even get to the end of the game yet. The end of the game, the defense, who had been great all game, they allowed the Broncos to drive down the field. Yeah, okay, the defense didn't look good on that drive. And that penalty call against Taron Johnson was garbage. I'll just get that out of the way right now. And then the Broncos, the defense, after having a great game, just needs the special teams and the coaching staff to bail them out once, after the defense has bailed them out time and time again over the last 6 weeks. And of course, nope, they can't do it. So the Broncos line up for a 41-yard field goal. And first of all, the timeout management by McDermott was terrible. He calls his timeout right away. That gives the Broncos plenty of time to get their field goal unit on the field. And gives them time to run down the clock as much as they want so the Bills won't get another shot with it. Any coach, with half of a brain would have called his timeout with 14 or 15 seconds, but we've seen how McDermott, is absolutely horrendously bad at using his timeouts. And by the way, that's always been a thing. He's terrible at clock management. He's got to be one of the worst head coaches in the league at clock management and timeout management. He's just absolutely awful. And he has been since he got here. But we were able to overlook that because things were going well. Not so much anymore, Sean. You're not lucky like that anymore. So he calls his timeout in about the worst time possible. Classic McDermott move, right? And 41-yard field goal. And the Broncos kicker, Will Lutz, he misses it. And I'm up there in section 337, and I start jumping up and down celebrating. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we held on to win. And then I'm looking around, I'm like, wait, why is nobody else celebrating? And then I looked down on the field, and I saw the flags. And then the referees announced that the Bills had too many players on the field. In a key spot in the game. And I'm really going to try to tone it down here. I'm not going to blow off the speakers or anything. I'm really going to try to tone it down. I already said a lot on Monday night. In a key spot in the game, you can't even count to 11? Are you kidding me? Right then and there, with that one play, I was about ready to fire Sean McDermott myself. There is no excuse for that, ever. A careless, stupid mistake like that, when the game is on the line and you have too many men on the field, are you kidding me? The Broncos did miss their second chance. They won 24-22. Embarrassing. Pathetic. Every single coach on that sideline, whether it's the special teams coordinator, whether it's McDermott, whoever it is, I don't care. They should be ashamed of themselves. That was pathetic. You have too many men on the field. Are you kidding me? And then, of course, Sean McDermott in his post-game press conference is blaming anybody but himself. He's like, yeah, you know, we practiced that a few times this week, and I'm really upset. Oh, I'm glad you were emotionally affected by it, Sean. That's good. I'm glad to hear it. Josh Allen pouting as usual in his press conference. I'm glad, there is never an excuse for that. And I understand people saying, you know, it's the player's responsibility or it's the special teams coordinator's responsibility. And Sean McDermott kind of went that way, kind of alluded to that, blaming his players. Sean, I have a question for you. Are you or are you not the head coach? You're not just the defensive coordinator. Get that through your head, McDermott. You're not just the defensive coordinator. And I think that it just, man, it's ridiculous. And I'm really trying to tone myself down here because not a lot of good things to say. I mean, and Parker and I both so Parker and I parked in the same spot for the game. And after the game, we just stood there and hugged. We couldn't believe it. Parker just sat in his seat, no expression. I stood on top of the bleacher with my hands on top of my head and my jaw on the ground. I couldn't believe the horrible mismanagement I had just seen. How many more stupid losses, how many more pathetic embarrassments is McDermott going to have with this team? How many more times are the Bills going to fail to live up to expectations? Keeps happening over and over and over again. We'll see what Joe Brady can do as the offensive coordinator. But I'm telling you, that clock is ticking on Sean McDermott. He's now fired, 3 coordinators, one of them left. Things are starting to add up. That clock is ticking, and that seat is getting pretty darn warm under his rear end, let me tell you. So my picks for the week, I always end with my picks for the week. Mini Bills rant over for now, at least. Bengals-Ravens play tomorrow night. 69% of voters going with the Ravens. I'll go with Baltimore. I think they bounce back. That's a good Ravens team. They're good. Sunday, 1 o'clock game, Steelers and Browns. Deshaun Watson is out for the season. I'm going to pick Pittsburgh because I like to see chaos. The Bears in Detroit against the Lions. I think the Lions win that one. The Chargers in Green Bay against the Packers. I think it's going to be a good game. 88% of voters going with the Chargers. I'm actually going to go with Green Bay. I think they win that one. The Raiders and Dolphins in Miami. I think the Dolphins blow them out. Giants and Commanders in Washington. The Giants are hopeless. Washington wins that one. Cowboys in Carolina against the Panthers. I think Dallas wins. And Tennessee in Jacksonville against the Jags. Jacksonville wins that one. Cardinals and Texans in Houston. The Texans, man, they look good. Houston wins that one. Then the 4 o'clock games, Tampa Bay and the 49ers. 49ers win that one. The Jets and Bills. I'm really considering picking the Jets, to be 100% honest. I don't even know. Seahawks and Rams, I'll pick the Seahawks. Sunday night, Vikings, Broncos, I'll pick Minnesota. Monday night, Eagles, Chiefs, Super Bowl rematch. Going to be a tight game. I'm going to go with the Eagles in that one. Bills, Jets, I don't even know if I want to make a pick because I could easily see them losing that one too. Good luck figuring out the rest of your season, Buffalo. You lose games like that, going nowhere. All right. That'll do it for another episode of Big Blue Sports Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. This was kind of a, rant episode. I was obviously not happy at all, but, thanks for tuning in, and I will not see you next week, as next week is Thanksgiving break. I want to wish everybody a very, everybody get home safe, and the weather's going to be nicer this year than it was last year getting home for Thanksgiving, but everybody have a really, really nice break. Take some time for yourself, I think I need to do some meditation after the Bills game, for crying out loud. Take some time to yourself, and We will catch you in 2 weeks. Thanks for tuning in to Big Blue Sports Podcast here on WCVF 88.9 FM. Be well, everybody. See you in 2 weeks.